Hello everyone, this is My Two Cents, and today I'm going to be talking about the long-awaited and much-discussed Marvel movie, Black Panther. Weeks before this film was released, liberals were raving about what a great sign of racial justice it was that a black superhero was getting a movie set in a black society in Africa. Some went as far as to say that giving Black Panther a bad review was racist, even if it turned out that it was a horrible movie. The group Movement for Black Lives even organized a campaign using Black Panther to try and get blacks to register to vote so that they could, quote, build their own Wakanda. I personally have always loved Marvel movies, strictly for the entertainment factor, but it was clear before this movie came out that it was going to be heavily politicized, so I decided it would be worth it to do a movie review. But I think I might just need a little bit of help with this one. Mr. Dapperton, you have any thoughts on Black Panther?
It's February 2018, and I would say this is, so far in the MCU, one of the best Marvel movies ever made. It's in the top 5 for me, for sure. It might get pushed out of the top 5 once Infinity War comes out, but we'll see. Now, this is a great Marvel movie in all senses. It has great action scenes, great special effects, great acting, but let me tell you what stands out to me. One is the villain. The villain is one of the top 5 villains in MCU history. He might be the best villain that we had so far in the MCU. When you root for the villain, that's when you know you have a good villain. And trust me when I say that the audience was rooting for this villain. He wasn't your average MCU villain where he's evil for some unexplained reason. This character is actually pretty deep. You related to this guy, and that's what made him unique. That's what made him special, and that's what made him awesome. Now, what's unique about this movie is this is the first time I've ever seen an ethno-state in film. They didn't allow whitey in, they didn't allow immigrants, they didn't allow refugees in. And to their own admission, that's what made their civilization so strong. These Wakandians are basically alt-righters. But instead of wanting a white ethno-state, they want a black ethno-state. And what's funny is left-wingers hate alt-righters. They think they're all Nazis. But then they see a movie like this where the roles are reversed. Instead of a white ethno-state, it's a black ethno-state, and they're all for it. So does that mean by their own admission that they're racist? Because they're all for it when it has to do with the other race. It seems like they're not against ethno-states. It seems like they're just against white people. If a black person wants to build an ethno-state, they think that shit's beautiful. And that shows their hypocrisy. Now, do I personally think an ethno-state is a good idea? No, absolutely not. But I think people should have the freedom to make any society they want. If somebody wants to build a white ethno-state or a black ethno-state, all the power to them. I don't think it's going to do much good because technology from outside countries can't come in and improve your society, which makes your society pretty primitive. So basically, if you're black and you want to build an ethno-state, all the power to you. If you're white and you want to build an ethno-state, I'm not racist. All the power to you. You should have that right too. Now, imagine if the roles were reversed. Instead of it being Black Panther, it's White Panther. Instead of there being a black ethno-state, there's a white ethno-state. And they're pro-border, they're anti-immigrant, anti-refugee, and they're anti-black people, anti-Mexican. People would call that the most racist movie of all time. But when black people make the same movie, it's praised for its diversity. Like, what? Why is it being praised for diversity? It's the least diverse movie I've ever seen. It's also praised for being anti-racist, when it's the most racist movie I have ever seen. Black Panther is praised for fighting racism, while if white people made the same exact movie, it would be considered the most racist movie of all time. Do you know what that tells me? That tells me that left-wingers have a bias against white people. They prefer black people over white people. That's racist. Now I'm going to go ahead and let My Two Cents talk about the plot, and give a deeper analysis on the movie overall.
Let's get into it.
Don't freeze.
I never freeze.
The revolution will not be televised.
First, spoiler alert, If you haven't seen Black Panther yet and don't want your surprises ruined, stop watching right now and come back after you have seen the movie. If not, here's a quick synopsis. Long ago, a meteor made of the fictitious metal vibranium crashed in Africa. 5 different African tribes who settled on top of it created the nation of Wakanda. As the years went by, they discovered that besides simply being the strongest metal on Earth, vibranium has many other applications as well, which allowed them to grow into a technologically advanced society unlike anything the rest of the world has ever seen. Afraid of what might happen if vibranium ever fell into the wrong hands, Wakanda decided to remain completely isolated and hidden from the rest of the world, projecting the idea that they are a poor, third-world nation. To maintain their security and isolation, the King of Wakanda also serves as the Black Panther. By consuming a special concoction that comes from a glowing purple herb, the king obtains superhuman strength, which combined with his advanced technological supersuit makes him a formidable opponent.
The revolution will not be televised.
Let's have some fun.
However, not all Wakandans think that Wakanda should continue in its ways. The main villain of the film, Killmonger, is the son of a former Wakandan prince who grew up in the United States. He claims that black people all around the world are being oppressed, which could be brought to an end if Wakanda armed them all with vibranium weapons. Wakanda could then rise up to rule the world, making it a better place for black people everywhere. As you might imagine, T'Challa, the Black Panther, struggles to defeat Killmonger, nearly losing his life. But ultimately, he comes back to defeat Killmonger and finally chooses to reveal the truth about Wakanda to the world, vowing that their advanced knowledge and technology will from now on be used to make the world a better place. I'll first say that I thought Black Panther was an awesome movie. It had an entertaining plot, decent special effects, and plenty of superhero-style combat, which is really the most you can hope for from a Marvel movie these days. Personally, I like the Captain America and Thor films the best when it comes to the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but I thought Black Panther was definitely worth the price of a movie ticket. Specifically, the final battle scene involves the Wakandan army using trained rhinos that are equipped with vibranium armor, which I thought was pretty awesome. Getting on to the more political elements of the film, all throughout Black Panther there is talk about blacks being oppressed around the world, and the assertion that the Wakandans should have been ashamed of how they didn't stop European colonists from enslaving blacks, even though they had the power to do so. Slavery was and is a great evil. However, the leftists tend to paint this image of Africa having been this beautiful, peace-loving place that was attacked unprovoked by the greedy white man, who has subsequently enslaved and oppressed the black man all throughout history simply because he was black. This narrative is utterly false. As Dr. Zaid Antrim, a historian who specializes in the history of sub-Saharan West Africa, notes, not only was slavery an established institution in West Africa before European traders arrived, but Africans were also involved in a trans-Saharan trade in slaves along these routes. African rulers and merchants were thus able to tap into pre-existing methods and networks of enslavement to supply European demand for slaves. Enslavement was most often a byproduct of local warfare, kidnapping, or the manipulation of religious and judicial institutions. Military, political, and religious authority within West Africa determined who controlled access to the Atlantic slave trade, and some African elites, such as those in the Dahomey and Ashanti empires, took advantage of this control and used it to their profit by enslaving and selling other Africans to European traders. Bottom line, slavery is wrong. But every society in history has been full of assholes who wanted to enslave each other, and this is not unique to Europeans. Black Panther actually illustrates well that the cultural Marxism that pushes these false narratives of oppressor and oppressed ends up helping no one except a few individuals who wish to maintain power over others. No one needs to feel guilty or entitled based on what their ancestors did centuries earlier. Killmonger, the villain of the film, is introduced as having been a graduate of the U.S. Naval Academy, MIT, and a decorated Navy SEAL. He claims that he's seen black oppression that occurs in the United States. But tell me, how could he have accomplished all these impressive academic and military feats if it is indeed true that blacks are oppressed in America? The fact that Killmonger is fictional doesn't help because there are real individuals who meet this type of description. Blacks have graduated from Ivy League and military institutions, held positions in government to include the last president, and are also high-ranking members in large corporations, Hollywood, and professional sports. If blacks are oppressed, none of these accomplished black people should have been able to make it to where they are. Further, even assuming that black oppression was a thing, Killmonger's solution is simply to reverse the situation. Give blacks vibranium weapons and then rule the world, oppressing other races with the same iron fist that he loathes the white man for having done. This is why I oppose identitarianism and collectivism. It only leads to totalitarian rule and more destruction. Regardless of how bad a given tyrant may be, simply trading them for another tyrant isn't a solution. The only thing that will ever end racial tension is if we start treating people as individuals and judging them based on their personal merits, not on what their ancestors did or didn't do centuries earlier. To my pleasant surprise, this actually seemed to be a theme that was explored at the end of Black Panther. Even if you have been wronged, it's ultimately of no help to anyone if you become the very evil you supposedly oppose. T'Challa states as much in a vision he has where he speaks to his dead father and other deceased Wakandan monarchs. He tells them that they were so concerned about preserving Wakanda and Wakandan culture that it stopped them from doing what they knew was right. My only other significant thought is that people need to be reminded that Wakanda is a fictional country. There's nothing wrong with enjoying a work of fiction, but some commentators are talking about Wakanda as though it is a model for black people today, such as those in the movement for Black Lives. Or there are those that claiming Wakanda is a model for a modern ethno-state, such as those in the alt-right. Both groups of people need a reality check. Wakanda is fictional. There is not a country on Earth that looks like Wakanda, and the reason for that is that no country that isolates itself for centuries becomes insanely technologically advanced. This is a fantasy. All in all, Black Panther was a great movie. It has an interesting plot, some great superhero combat to include fighting rhinos, and it helps to set up the next move forward in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Be sure to stick around to the end of the credits when you see the movie in order to get a hint about how Black Panther will be involved in the upcoming Avengers Infinity War. Thanks so much for your help, Mr. Dapperton.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me on. If you guys like my 2 cents' content, be sure to subscribe to them. Link is in the description box.
And that's our 2 cents, so take it for what it's worth.